Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jodi L. Milner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Squirrel, podcast for the distracted writer. I am Candace.
And I am Jodi, and today we are talking about writing sprints.
This is our episode 4, so it's Jodi's. This is one that she picked, which is fine.
So my last episode was
lovely.
Time management and how to find time, and now we're going to fine-tune how to get the most out of the pockets of time that you do find.
Yay.
And so one of the best tools I've found, if you really just want to get words on the page, are writing sprints. So can you give us kind of a definition of what a writing sprint is?
Well, a writing sprint would be a dedicated time. This is where you get your timer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
your favorite.
You say, ready, set, go, and you just dump. You just write as much as possible, and just without any filter, without any editing, you just dump.
Absolutely. And the trick is you don't want your editorial brain to be working right now. You want your creative brain to be turned all the way to 10. Because the minute you're like, ooh, I don't like that sentence, and then you delete it and you try it again, and then you delete it and you try it again, and then you everyone's done this. It's okay.
I think that's a skill that you need to develop, because I definitely struggle with not editing while I'm writing. So writing sprints for me are a little stressful. I say a little, like a lot. As I said, I just don't like timers. So when I'm sprinting, I have to, it's just a little, I have to get into a specific mindset. And it is learned. I mean, it's not something I have to turn it on. That's true.
So why would you want to use a writing sprint instead of just sitting down and simply writing?
One of the things that came to my mind for this question is I don't think that people think about creativity as a muscle. So thinking of creativity as a muscle, that means that you need to actively use it. And creativity, if you don't, I know that people can get into a creative mode. So when if you are doing a marathon, you start rather slowly in order to get to this goal. But it does strengthen up your lungs and your legs and all these different functioning parts of your body. So creativity, people don't often think of as a activity where you actually learn to use different muscles. But what you're doing is you're using this part of your brain that is naturally, well, maybe not for us, but it is frequently turned off. Because it does not need to be, it doesn't do all of your daily tasks that you have set up, just as a organization of who you are, just as being a human. So when you tap into creativity, it's good to exercise that muscle to strengthen it. Now, when I talk about sprints, this is something that you can immediately will get you into a mode of creativity that will help strengthen it specifically as a muscle, so that you can not only be a better writer, but you can get into a creative mode sooner and quicker.
And creative flow is kind of that magical space where all of a sudden the words start coming, and your brain wants to create beautiful, wonderful things. And a lot of times our editor's like, no.
Yeah.
No, don't like that. Yuck. But when you kind of turn it off, if you give yourself a chance to just let that creative brain really just go for it, it will create things that you're like, hey.
That you would have never actually thought of.
That's cool. Like making associations between two things that you normally would be like, no. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, ooh, shiny. That is really nice. I love the way these two ideas come together. But if you're using your analytical brain, because most of the day we're using our analytical brain, it's our to-do lists, it's what's next, it's how to build a sandwich. It's like it's your analytical brain. It gets stuff done, but your creative brain wants to put things together. And you do have to make it work. So do you personally ever use writing sprints?
As I said, they kind of stress me out. When I do use writing sprints, I have to race against somebody else. That's how I do it, because then it becomes like more of a competition. I like competitions, honestly.
You're competitive.
Yes.
It's
hard to say that I'm really competitive, but I like to improve. So I like to put myself in a place where it is competitive, so I can gauge exactly where I am, if that makes sense. So that's when I do writing sprints, I like to do them with other people.
I think that's completely fair. As for me, I tend to not use them unless I'm trying to get a draft down quickly. And one of those examples is like if you're doing the NaNoWriMo Challenge.
Yes.
So the NaNoWriMo Challenge is the National November Writing Month, and it is a challenge to write a 50,000-word novel in 30 days. And that means about 1,600 words every single day. If you are trying to edit those sentences, you're going to be spending 4 and 5 and 6 hours trying to get that done. Now, if you're using a writing sprint and you're trying to just let your creative brain just go for it, you'll get the words down. 40% of those words might need a little help.
Oh, yes, definitely.
But you give yourself the chance to get all the ideas you want in the book onto the page, and then afterwards you can go back and be like, I can refine this, tighten this, polish this, adjust this until it's like beautiful, shiny, and exactly what I want. Now, this makes plotters, like if they plot ahead and they know what they're going to do, it works really, really well. But if a plotter doesn't have a plan and then they try to do a writing sprint, crashing and burning is a very real possibility, but it's also a learning experience. And it's like, yes, testing yourself about writing into the dark, I think is really important every once in a while because you don't know what you're going to get. That's and you favorite. Could get something really amazing. Yeah. You could get a trash fire. It's okay because now you know either it's going to work or you need to refine your idea.
A lot of the times when people ask me writing advice, I often say, don't go back. Just keep going forward. The difference between me and you is I've finished a book. That's it. Really, that's it. So when you understand when the end is, you know exactly where to go back and fix. You know those spots. And it's a really good, I like editing more than I like just writing it out. Because I get more creative ideas actually when I'm editing and going through it again and again. But that's one of the things about sprints that I really like that you point out was just getting a lot of just that basic drafting out. I like that idea. I maybe I just never put it together like that before, but I'm going to incorporate that into my language.
And it can be very helpful. I think we overthink a lot of the time. And we start, for our own projects, we're like, this needs to be so laden with meaning and beauty and purpose that it actually shuts the brain down because we're putting too many expectations and too many must-haves. Like, have you ever brainstormed for somebody else's project and you're like, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea. And it's so easy to come up with ideas that are like, kind of cool. But when it's your project, you're like, it has to meet all of this criteria. And all of a sudden the ideas are like, but nope, and hard. And it's really frustrating because all of a sudden you put this pressure on yourself. And so when you're forced to do a sprint, you're forced to come up with solutions that might not fit your criteria, but will probably work still.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. Okay, tell me about your process. Tell me about how you do a writing sprint.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded at the Farmhouse Recording Studio in Bluffdale, Utah. So, I learned a method, and this is a dear mutual friend of ours that taught me this method. And Talissa, if you're listening, we love you to death.
I love you, Talissa.
So, Talissa Sains, she taught this method where you have very, very specific sections of sprinting. So the first sprint is a 5-minute sprint. And this is your brainstorming sprint. You take your rough idea of what you need the specific scene or chapter to be, and you take 5 minutes just to put all the things down as much as you can. 5 minutes, and you just fly.
You just barrel through it.
And you just barrel through all the things. Like maybe you don't know how a specific part is going to work, and so you're like, "How is Bob going to get out of the cave?" Well, he could do this. No, maybe not. And you literally are writing out your thoughts as they fall.
Okay.
And
is there specific structure to it, or you're just like...
It is whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
It's whatever you end up needing. Because when you approach a specific chapter, usually you'll have kind of a basic idea. And if you're a plotter, you might have the whole thing mapped out. But you might need to fill in little gaps. And this is your chance to fill in those tiny little gaps.
There are... there are always ugly parts that you have to write.
There's going to be ugly parts.
There's those parts that you just don't want to write. There's always Quidditch in every novel. Let's talk about that.
Oh, dear. So that is the brainstorming. So that's just 5 minutes.
Okay.
Where you just kind of get the idea of the chapter, and you get to hold it in your head, and you get to pull all the little pieces together, and then you stop. And you just look at it and kind of internalize it.
Okay.
And then the next part is you do a 10-minute where you're kind of writing through the skeleton of the scene. And this is going to be something that's very stick figure-like. He's like, Bob walked to the cave and he saw the bear, and the bear got in his way, and the bear challenged him. And it's going to be kind of a high level running through of what needs to happen in the scene. And this is when you're going to discover, I haven't figured out this particular part. And then that's when maybe you can take that second to be like, what could happen here? And you fix the particular part that you might have gotten stuck on.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
And you're uncovering all of these little, I didn't consider that. And you give your brain a chance to kind of go through and figure it out. Mm-hmm. And you're letting it fly with any idea that comes out. And sometimes those ideas are amazing. Sometimes they're not. But you get the chance to find out before you're committing.
Okay.
And then the last part of Talissa's method is your 15-minute timer, although this one can be longer if you like longer ones, where you actually start writing the scene as you would have it appear in the finished product, using all of these ideas you've collected and this flow that hopefully you've already created now that you've kind of eased yourself
into this
and you understand
space.
It and you're in the creative space, then you just go. Mm-hmm. And you're doing your dialogue, and you're just trusting that good words will come because you are allowing them to come. Mm-hmm. And you can keep repeating these sprints until you finish your session or until your 10-year-old needs something. Because if you're in this good flow, and all in all, like one round of this is a half an hour. Mm-hmm. Like you can spend a half an hour and essentially get an entire scene mapped, preconceived, done.
Oh, my goodness.
And just like bam, bam, bam. Now, is it going to be perfect? Of course it's not going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be pretty good, though? I think it's not going to be awful. I think it's going to be pretty good. So you just kind of keep repeating it until you grow out this whole story that you've been trying to get out of your brain forever. And all of a sudden, you've got a book.
Mm-hmm. I cannot wait to try this. Actually,
it's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, this is much better than me just working in competition with somebody. So this is given guidance,
and it's a little more structure. It's not so much into the dark. You do
and it's
have
not a lot
purpose.
Of time.
No, you're committing yourself to maybe a half an hour, and maybe that's all you have.
Well, and I can definitely do this. Definitely do this on my breaks or my lunches. Mm-hmm. So that is I just can't wait to kind of look at what I need to do and what I can do.
I want to go back to the thought of barreling through the ugly stuff.
Okay, yes.
Because I feel that is something we can say a lot more about.
Okay, yes. There's just going to be ugly places in your novels and in your writing that you just don't want to write, but you have to. And I think sometimes it feels soul-defeating when you have to face those. So I like the idea of, like, when I get to those ugly parts, I usually just put a parentheses and say, fill in later, or highlight it and say, this is basically it. And then I move on to a different section that I want to write.
So what are your personal ugly parts that you tend to skip?
Oh, I like description. No, just kidding. I like dialogue. That's right. It's description that I falter on. I do like to flower my words, but I don't like exposition at all.
No one does.
I try to avoid exposition. So I like focusing on dialogue. When I have to fill in where, because I'll just have characters talk, but then I have to kind of explain where they are and what they're doing and that kind of stuff, which that's a lot of that I don't like to do. But for me, it's description, not dialogue.
So the parts that I struggle the most are parts that have extremely high emotional moments. Like the scenes that I know are going to make me cry, like I will put them off. Because they are so draining.
I love
because you have.
I love writing that.
Don't you find yourself like? Doesn't it tire you though? Like when you get done, you're completely wrung out.
Well, and we as writers have a soul connection to our work, so I can totally get that you get exhausted when you write those type of things. I know that. Have you? So you've cried when you've written.
There are specific scenes. Not very often. But there have been a couple where it hits a little too close to things that have happened in my personal life.
Right.
And then it's just like, I know this is therapy. I know this is helping me work through something that clearly I still have a lot of feelings about. Mm-hmm. And so part of me is just like, it's okay. It is okay to go through this. This is actually helping me process things that maybe I haven't taken the time to process in my personal life. But at the same time, it is exhausting.
Yeah. So a sprint would actually really benefit that.
It's a ripping off the Band-Aid kind of thing where not only are you going through it, but you know you're not going to be sitting there very long. Mm-hmm. So you have this like intensive mini therapy session, but you're also getting the words down that you've been putting off. Because holding on to it and just saying, I will work on this later is also exhausting because it's hanging over your head. Yeah. And then you're like, I'm avoiding it because I know I'm avoiding it because I know it's going to be hard. And then that exhausts you. And so, ripping Band-Aids off is always good.
That is a good idea.
But it takes a lot of courage too.
Oh, yes.
And so that's where it's a challenge. And I think you have to be up to the challenge, but you do have to be in the right headspace. Like if all of a sudden everything in your life has gotten really, really hard, maybe you're not going to work on your micro intense therapy scenes those days.
True.
And that's okay. Mm-hmm. You might need to find a day where things have been a bit low key and do it at the end of the day so you're not holding on to it the rest of the day or you're exhausted the rest of the day. Because I have done that and my family's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I had to kill somebody off. And I liked them. Yeah. And now I'm wallowing in it. Mm-hmm. So give me a minute.
As writers, doing what is right for the story is always really hard.
Uh-huh.
So I totally get that. Well, Jodi, okay, I really like that you brought up writing sprints because I didn't think that this was going to be a
I taught you something today.
That I was like, okay, whatever. We're gonna talk about writing sprints. Okay, what I'm all in because of course I am, but I'm kind of mind blown a little bit by what some of the things that you're bringing up and we're discussing that, and it's filled up my brain so that I am ready to. I feel energized to go and just try some of these methods and just try to get out some of the ugly parts and face my demons, and it would be really fun, right?
Yeah, our idea of fun, I think, is different than anyone else's idea of fun.
It's true, but I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week on Squirrel, the writing podcast for distracted writers. And next time, I am so gooey excited about this next episode. Oh my gosh, it is going to be so fun.
She has been nerding out about it for like a week and a half now.
Yes. So Absolutely. This one is not going to be specifically about craft, but it's going to be about books. So we are going to do what I call the Nerdiest Book Challenge, where we both bring what we feel are nerdy books, and we're going to talk about them.
And when we do, I hope you come to join us. Again, thank you for listening, and have a terrific rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jodi L. Milner. This episode was recorded at the Farmhouse Recording Studio. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
That went well. I like that one.
You did well.
That's a good one. In the bag.
It just went a lot smoother.